All right, let's unpack this. Imagine waking up one day to find out that the entire world despises your very existence. It's not just a few individuals here and there, but every nation, every community, and every person harbors a deep-rooted hatred towards your race. The Eldians in Attack on Titan found themselves in this nightmarish scenario. Discrimination, prejudice, and oppression were constants in their lives. Now put yourself in Eren's shoes. He witnessed firsthand the pain and suffering inflicted upon his people. He saw families torn apart, lives shattered. His people were used as weapons, treated as second-class citizens, treated like animals, if not worse. The world was a hostile place for them, and it seemed like no matter what they did, the hatred persisted. When you're confronted with such a dire situation, what options do you have? Negotiation? Diplomacy? Unfortunately, the series had shown us, time and time again, that hatred is not easily swayed by reason. The Eldians had tried peaceful means, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. The world was determined to wipe them off the face of the earth. In the face of this overwhelming hostility, Eren had no choice but to take drastic measures. His people's survival was at stake, and he bore the weight of that responsibility on his shoulders. Can you imagine the burden he carried, knowing that the world wanted to exterminate his race? It's easy for outsiders to pass judgment and say, why not find a peaceful solution? But the reality is that peace was not a viable option when the world refused to see the Eldians as anything other than monsters. Sometimes you just have to fight fire with fire. Eren understood that if he didn't take action, the Eldians would be condemned to a life of persecution and eventual annihilation. The world had made its intentions clear, and they were not going to back down. So Eren made the difficult choice to utilize the power of the rumbling. It was a desperate measure, but he saw it as the only way to ensure the survival of his people. While the decision to use such destructive force is undeniably morally questionable, it's crucial to understand the context in which it was made. Eren was backed into a corner, left with no other option. The whole world hated the Eldians, and they wanted them gone. In such a scenario, drastic measures become not only justified, but necessary for self-preservation. All the nations of the world rallied together and declared against Paradise Island with the goal of total extermination of the people who lived there. The world basically told the Eldians in Paradise, we are coming, and we are going to kill all of you. Now put yourself in Eren's shoes again. Imagine someone breaking into your home, threatening your family and loved ones. Are you just supposed to sit back and let them trample all over you? Of course not. You have every right to defend yourself and protect those you care about. The world had declared their intentions to annihilate the Eldians. It was an outright assault on their very existence. In the face of such aggression, Eren had a choice, to passively accept their fate or to fight back. And he chose to fight back. But here's the thing. Eren wasn't the one who initiated the conflict. He didn't wake up one morning and decide to wage war on the rest of the world. The war was declared against his people, against Paradise Island. They were the ones being targeted, and Eren was simply defending his home and his people from impending annihilation. Eren had every right to defend his people, to stand up against those who sought to eradicate them. It's not about aggression or warmongering. It's about self-preservation and protecting what is dear to you. So when critics point fingers at Eren and say, why didn't he choose peace? It's important to remember that peace wasn't an option. The world had made it clear that their intent was destruction and total annihilation. Eren had to take a stand to defend his people from the aggressors who declared war on them. It's a harsh reality, but sometimes, when faced with hostility and aggression, the only response is an equal amount of hostility and aggression. Eren's decision to defend the Eldians was not only justified, but necessary. He wasn't the instigator of the conflict, he was simply responding to it, to protect his people from those who sought to harm them. In the end, Eren's choice to fight back was a testament to his love and loyalty towards his people. He refused to stand idly by while they were targeted for destruction. It was a fight for survival, a fight for the right to exist. And in that fight, Eren was not only justified, but absolutely right to defend his people from the storm that threatened to consume them. When it comes to the survival of an entire race, it's not a matter of simply finding a peaceful resolution or reaching a compromise. For Eren, his ultimate goal was to ensure the survival of his people, the Eldians. But how do you achieve that when the entire world is hell-bent on wiping you out? This is where the concept of survival of the fittest comes into play. The Eldians were backed into a corner, facing an existential threat like no other. The world's hatred and desire for their extermination left them with limited options. In the face of such dire circumstances, Eren had to make a difficult choice: to fight or to succumb to annihilation. Cue the rumbling, a massive, brutal, and devastating plan that would leave a path of destruction in its wake. This was not a decision taken lightly. Eren understood the weight of his actions and the immense sacrifice it would entail. However, desperate times call for desperate measures, and he was willing to do whatever it took to ensure the survival of his people. Negotiating or compromising with the rest of the world wasn't a viable option. The Eldians had tried that before, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. They were treated as monsters, seen as a threat to the world's stability. In such a scenario, it became clear to Eren that it was a kill-or-be-killed situation. The world had left them with no other choice. In the face of imminent extinction, Eren made the decision to fight tooth and nail for his people's survival. It's important to understand that this choice wasn't driven by a thirst for violence or a desire for revenge. Eren's choice to fight for his people's survival, even in the face of immense opposition and ethical dilemmas, stemmed from his unwavering dedication to protect those he held dear. While the rumbling may be a difficult pill to swallow, it's crucial to understand the immense pressure and limited options Eren faced. In the context of a world that wanted to erase his people, the rumbling was only a response to the existential threat they faced. Eren's goal was to secure the survival of the Eldians, and in his mind, fighting tooth and nail, even through drastic means, was the only path to achieve that goal. Let's confront a harsh reality. Whether Eren took action or not, genocide was always going to happen. It was a dark cloud that seemed inevitable, regardless of their choices. The world's hatred and desire to eradicate the Eldians left them teetering on the edge of annihilation. By initiating the rumbling, Eren flipped the script. He shifted the balance of power, putting the rest of the world in a dangerous position. Consider the alternative. If Eren had chosen to remain passive, the Eldians would have been condemned to a future of oppression, persecution, and eventual eradication. The world had made its intentions clear. They wanted the Eldians gone. It was only a matter of time before genocide would take place, with the Eldians as its victims. Eren understood this grim fate and took matters into his own hands. By unleashing the rumbling, he presented the world with a devastating ultimatum. It was a daring move, but it served to level the playing field, forcing the rest of the world to confront the consequences of their own aggression. This meant that the tables had turned. The rest of the world now faced the prospect of being on the receiving end of destruction. While it may be difficult to grapple with the sacrifices and devastation caused by the rumbling, it's crucial to recognize the alternative: utter annihilation of the Eldian people. Eren's choice, while not without its moral complexities, was driven by a deep-rooted desire to protect his people and provide them with a chance to live. In a world where genocide was looming, Eren's decision to shift the balance and give his people a shot at survival can be seen as a tragic but necessary action. It's a heart-wrenching realization that sacrifices had to be made, but Eren's motivation was to secure a future for the Eldians, even if it came at a tremendous cost.
我々は国も人種も異なる者同士です。しかし、強大な敵を前にした今こそ一つになる時なのです。死にたくない者は力を貸してほしい。どうか一緒に未来を生きてほしい。皆で力を合わせれば。
Morality isn't a popularity contest. Just because the world's population outweighs the Eldians doesn't automatically make them morally superior. The notion that the majority is always right is flawed and ignores the principles of justice and fairness. In fact, history has shown time and time again that minorities have every right to fight against their oppressors. Oppression doesn't become justified just because it's carried out by a larger group. Morality is rooted in the principles of empathy, equality, and the recognition of human rights. It's about standing up for what is right, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Eren's choice to unleash the rumbling was not an act of blind vengeance or a desire for retribution. It was a response to an overwhelmingly oppressive majority that sought to eradicate his people. The world's hatred towards the Eldians and their desire to wipe them out created an environment where the minority had no choice but to defend themselves. Imagine being part of a marginalized group, constantly targeted and oppressed by the majority. The weight of that oppression is suffocating, and it becomes necessary to fight back in order to secure your basic rights and survival. Eren understood this struggle all too well. He recognized that the Eldians had the right to resist their oppressors, to protect themselves and their right to exist. Critics may argue that there could have been a peaceful resolution or a different path to take. But in a world where the Eldians were deemed monsters and faced relentless persecution, peace was not a viable option. Eren's choice to unleash the rumbling was a just response to the overwhelming oppression they faced. It was a call for justice and a demand to be recognized as equal human beings. It's important to recognize that the fight for justice and equality is more than about numbers. It's about the principles of morality and the acknowledgement that every individual, regardless of their race or background, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. So when critics argue that Eren's actions were unjustifiable because the world's population was larger, it negates the fundamental principles of morality. It denies the right of minorities to stand up against their oppressors, effectively silencing their voices and perpetuating injustice. Eren's choice to unleash the rumbling was not a decision made lightly. It was a response to a world that had deemed his people disposable. It was a plea for the Eldians to be recognized as human beings with the right to defend themselves against their oppressors. In the end, morality is not about numbers. It's about the principles of fairness, justice, and equality. Eren's choice to fight back against an overwhelmingly oppressive majority was a just response, driven by the innate human desire to protect oneself and one's community. It serves as a reminder that standing up for what is right is not contingent on the size of the opposition, but on the principles that guide our moral compass. Imagine this. You find yourself and your family in a neighborhood where you are despised by everyone. The hatred towards you and your loved ones has reached a boiling point, and your neighbors are plotting to wipe you out. It's a chilling situation, to say the least. But here's the twist. You have a means to defend yourself. You possess missiles capable of neutralizing the threat, effectively eliminating those who wish to harm you and your family. In a situation like this, let's be honest, there's a primal instinct that kicks in. Self-preservation becomes the priority, and protecting your loved ones is paramount. When faced with the imminent danger of being massacred by your neighbors, it's only natural to do everything in your power to ensure the safety of your family. The idea of standing idle while your loved ones face certain doom is inconceivable. In that moment, you wouldn't hesitate to click that button and eliminate the threat. Eren found himself in a similar predicament, burdened with the responsibility of his people's survival. The Eldians were not just despised, but the world harbored a deep-seated hatred towards them. The threat of extermination loomed over them, and Eren carried the weight of protecting his family, his people, on his shoulders. In this kind of situation, it's important to recognize the natural human instinct of self-preservation and protecting one's own loved ones. Eren's choice to unleash the rumbling was driven by this very instinct. It wasn't a decision made out of malice or a desire for violence. Instead, it was born out of the necessity to ensure the survival of his people and the ones he held dear. Now, it's crucial to acknowledge the complexity and moral implications of Eren's actions. The devastation caused by the rumbling cannot be ignored or justified lightly. However, it's equally important to understand the context in which these choices were made. When faced with the prospect of their complete annihilation, Eren had no choice but to act for the sake of his family, the Eldians. The responsibility he carried compelled him to take drastic measures. In his mind, it was a matter of protecting his loved ones from the massacre that awaited them. In our own lives, when faced with danger and the threat to our family, we would do whatever it takes to shield them from harm. It's an innate instinct that transcends moral judgments and forces us to prioritize the well-being of those closest to us. Eren's decision to unleash the rumbling, as difficult as it may be to reconcile, can be understood in this context. It was an act of self-preservation and a desperate attempt to safeguard his people from the impending doom that awaited them. Ultimately, the scenario we imagined serves as a relatable analogy to grasp the weight of the choices Eren faced. It highlights the undeniable drive we have to protect our loved ones and the lengths we might go to ensure their safety. In the end, Eren's actions, however controversial, can be seen as a reflection of this fundamental human instinct of self-preservation and the overwhelming responsibility to shield our families from harm. Wrapping things up, as we ponder the debates and discussions surrounding Eren's choices, it's important to remember the bigger picture. It's a reminder of the messy, complicated nature of morality and the tough decisions people face when pushed to their limits. Attack on Titan challenges our beliefs and forces us to grapple with the moral validity of actions taken to protect our people in a world that seems determined to snuff them out. In the end, there are no easy answers, but Eren's journey and the moral dilemmas he faced teach us the value of questioning our preconceived notions and exploring the complexities of right and wrong.